Picture this: a shadowy order of warrior monks, wielding both divine purpose and unimaginable wealth, vanished overnight without a trace, their treasures lost, their secrets buried, and their enemies terrified of what they might have left behind. This is the enigma of the Knights Templar. What really happened to history's most powerful secret society? Why did kings and popes fear them? And what forbidden knowledge did they guard so fiercely that it doomed them? From their meteoric rise as Europe's unstoppable bankers to their bloody downfall on a Friday the 13th, their story isn't just history, it's a conspiracy wrapped in a holy war sealed with a curse. Stick with us, because by the end of this video, you'll uncover truths about the Templars that rewrite everything you thought you knew about power, faith, and the shadows that still linger in our world today. To understand how these warrior monks became the stuff of legend, we need to travel back to the year 1119. The Holy Land was a dangerous place for Christian pilgrims, with bandits and rival factions lurking along every road. It was in this chaos that a French knight named Jacques de Molay stepped forward with a radical idea. Alongside 8 fellow warriors, he formed a brotherhood unlike any the world had seen, one bound by vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, yet armed with swords and a divine mandate. At first, they called themselves the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ. Their mission was simple yet daring: protect vulnerable pilgrims traveling to Jerusalem. King Baldwin II of Jerusalem granted them headquarters on the Temple Mount, the very site where Solomon's temple once stood. This wasn't just a strategic choice, it was symbolic. The Templars, as they later became known, drew their identity from this sacred ground, weaving their legacy into the fabric of biblical history. What started as a small band of knights quickly gained traction. The Church officially recognized them at the Council of Troyes in 1129, endorsing their unique blend of monastic piety and military might. Their distinctive white mantles, emblazoned with a red cross, became a symbol of both protection and divine authority on the battlefield. But what truly set them apart was their business acumen. Pilgrims needed safe passage, and the Templars offered more than just armed escorts. They pioneered an early form of banking, allowing travelers to deposit funds in Europe and withdraw them in the Holy Land. Jacques de Molay and his brothers couldn't have foreseen how their humble order would transform. Within decades, donations of land, gold, and political favors poured in from nobles and kings who saw them as holy warriors worth backing. Their connection to the Temple Mount also fueled whispers. What secrets might they have uncovered beneath those ancient stones? Some speculate they found relics, lost scrolls, or even fragments of the Ark of the Covenant. Whether myth or reality, one thing is certain: by blending faith, finance, and force, the Templars laid the foundation for an empire cloaked in mystery. Now, with their roots firmly planted, let's explore how this brotherhood of monks and soldiers turned into the most formidable power brokers of the medieval world. As their reputation grew, so did the Templars' reach, but not just on the battlefield. Here's where their story takes a surprising turn. While their swords defended pilgrims, their minds were reshaping the very concept of wealth and power in medieval Europe. Picture this: a weary traveler embarking from Paris to Jerusalem wouldn't risk carrying a fortune in gold. Instead, they'd deposit coins at a Templar commandery in France, receiving a coded letter of credit. Upon reaching the Holy Land, they'd present this note to another Templar outpost and collect their funds. It was an early form of international banking, complete with encryption to thwart thieves. This system didn't just protect money, it made the Templars indispensable. Kings and nobles quickly took notice. The Order's financial network sprawled across borders, with thousands of commanderies acting as medieval ATMs. They managed royal treasuries, issued loans to monarchs, and even brokered ransoms for captured crusaders. At their peak, they owned nearly 1/3 of Europe's liquid assets, a staggering sum for a group sworn to poverty. But how did warrior monks become such savvy financiers? their structure held the key. As a monastic order, they answered only to the Pope, bypassing local laws. Their estates produced income from agriculture, mills, and vineyards, while their vows prevented personal wealth, ensuring every penny was reinvested into the order's expansion. Their influence didn't stop at economics. The Templars became kingmakers, literally. When Richard the Lionheart needed funds for the Third Crusade, it was Templar gold that filled his coffers. In return, they gained privileges, exemption from taxes, the right to build their own ports, and even partial sovereignty in some regions. Their military prowess only amplified their clout. Unlike feudal armies that disbanded after campaigns, the Templars maintained a standing force of highly trained knights. Their fortresses, like the imposing Crac des Chevaliers, were masterclasses in defensive engineering, dominating strategic routes across the Levant. Yet their greatest asset was secrecy. Transactions were recorded in cryptic ledgers, their meetings held behind closed doors. This aura of mystery bred both awe and suspicion. Were they merely shrewd bankers, or did their vaults hold something far more valuable knowledge? Rumors swirled that their financial innovations were inspired by ancient texts recovered from the Temple Mount. Whatever the truth, one fact remains. By blending martial discipline with financial genius, the Templars didn't just rise to power, they redefined it. And as we'll soon see, that very power would become their greatest vulnerability. Now we turn to the shadows, where whispers of secret ceremonies and clandestine oaths swirled around the Templars like smoke from a censer. Among the most scandalous claims leveled against them was the so-called kissing of the posterior, an accusation so bizarre it demands scrutiny. During their trials, former members under torture confessed to being forced to kneel before a senior knight and kiss his lower back, navel, or even, as one lurid account insisted, the base of his spine. To medieval minds, this wasn't just humiliation. It was sacrilege, hinting at devil worship or homosexual rites forbidden by the Church. But how much of this was truth and how much was coerced fiction? Modern historians note that initiation rituals were common in medieval orders, often involving symbolic acts of submission. The Templars' alleged rites may have been twisted versions of legitimate ceremonies, exaggerated by their enemies. Consider this: many confessions emerged only after relentless torture, with details shifting wildly between testimonies. One knight might describe kissing a bearded idol, while another spoke of spitting on a crucifix. These inconsistencies suggest fabrication under duress, not a unified cultic practice. Yet even myths leave footprints. Some scholars propose the posterior kiss could trace back to an initiation rite gone awry, perhaps a misinterpreted gesture of fealty, like kissing a superior's robe hem. Others speculate it was a test of obedience, pushing recruits to extremes to prove loyalty. The Templars' notorious secrecy only fanned suspicions. Unlike other orders that welcomed public scrutiny, their chapters operated behind closed doors, fueling rumors of heresy. The most damning twist: these accusations became a self-fulfilling prophecy. When King Philip IV of France moved to destroy the Templars in 1307, the initiation rumors were weaponized as proof of their corruption. Never mind that similar slanders had been used against other groups. Here was a ready-made narrative of depravity, perfect for justifying confiscation of their wealth. And so, what might have begun as an esoteric ritual, or perhaps never existed at all, became the cornerstone of their downfall. So where does reality lie? The truth may be less sensational, but no less intriguing. If the Templars had secret rites, they likely served pragmatic purposes, binding members to absolute silence about financial operations or military strategies. In an era when betrayal could collapse their entire network, extreme oaths made brutal sense. But in the end, it wasn't their rituals that doomed them, it was the power those mysteries represented. And as we'll soon discover, their enemies weren't finished weaving dark legends around the Order's name. The whispers of the Templars' secret rituals now lead us to one of history's most enduring legends, their connection to the Holy Grail. Few mysteries have captured imaginations like the Grail, and the Templars' alleged role in its story blurs the line between medieval piety and modern myth. The Grail first emerged in 12th century romances like Chrétien de Troyes' Percival as a mystical vessel linked to Christ's Last Supper. But it wasn't until Wolfram von Eschenbach's Parzival that the Templars entered the narrative. Eschenbach described a knightly order called the Templars, guarding the Grail in a hidden fortress, an unmistakable nod to the Templars. Was this poetic license, or did it hint at something darker? Here's where fact and fantasy collide. After the Templars' fall, legends surge that they discovered the Grail beneath Solomon's temple during their excavations. Some theorists claim they found not a cup, but a cache of sacred knowledge, perhaps Gnostic texts or even the bloodline of Christ. Others argue they safeguarded the Shroud of Turin or the Ark of the Covenant, weaving these relics into the Grail mythos. But let's strip away the speculation. Historical records show the Templars venerated a mysterious head, often called Baphomet, a term later twisted into demonic imagery. Some scholars suggest this was the mummified head of John the Baptist, a relic tying them to the Grail's symbolic bloodline. In medieval Europe, relics meant power, and the Templars' rumored collection would have been a political goldmine. Modern conspiracy theories amplify these threads. Books like Holy Blood, Holy Grail posit that the Templars hid proof of Christ's marriage to Mary Magdalene, a secret so explosive it required their infamous secrecy. While historians dismiss this as fabrication, the allure persists. Even the Vatican's 1993 admission that the Shroud of Turin couldn't be carbon dated beyond the Templars' era reignited speculation. So did the Templars possess the Grail? The likelier truth is subtler. Their real Grail may have been their financial network, a system so advanced it seemed supernatural to contemporaries. Or perhaps their legacy became a canvas for later mythmakers, eager to cloak the Order's mundane demise in grander mystique. Either way, the Grail legend endures because it reflects our timeless hunt for hidden truths, a quest the Templars, willingly or not, came to symbolize. And as we'll see next, their grip on sacred secrets didn't end with relics. It extended deep beneath Jerusalem's Temple Mount, where whispers of unearthed treasures still echo. Now, let's descend beneath the surface of Jerusalem, where the Templars' most enigmatic chapter unfolds their excavations under Temple Mount. While their quest for the Holy Grail remains shrouded in legend, their physical digging beneath Solomon's temple is a matter of historical record. What they sought or found in those shadowed tunnels has fueled centuries of speculation. When the Templars established their headquarters on Temple Mount in the 12th century, they didn't just occupy the site, they excavated it. Historical accounts, like those of medieval chronicler William of Tyre, note their teams tunneling beneath what was then known as the Al-Aqsa Mosque, searching for something lost to time. But here's the puzzle: the Templars weren't archaeologists, they were warriors and bankers. So why dig? One theory points to their original mission. As protectors of pilgrims, they may have sought relics to bolster Christianity's legitimacy in the Holy Land. Yet whispers suggest their goals were far grander. Some claim they uncovered fragments of the Ark of the Covenant, hidden centuries earlier when Babylon sacked Jerusalem. Others argue they found scrolls, perhaps Gnostic Gospels, or even blueprints to Solomon's fabled temple, knowledge that could rewrite religious history. The most tantalizing clue comes from the Templars' own architecture. When they returned to Europe, they built churches with unusual features like the labyrinthine design of Chartres Cathedral, which mirrors descriptions of Solomon's temple. Was this mere homage, or did they replicate something they'd seen underground? Even their later interrogations hint at secrets. Under torture, some Templars confessed to worshipping a bearded head recovered from the East. Could this have been a relic from their digs? But why keep such discoveries hidden? Power. In medieval Europe, controlling sacred artifacts meant influence over kings and popes. If the Templars possessed proof of, say, the Ark's existence, revealing it could destabilize the Church's authority or make them targets, better to bury the truth both literally and figuratively. Modern archaeology adds layers to the mystery. 19th century expeditions under Temple Mount reported Templar-era tunnels, some leading to sealed chambers. And in 2007, a team using ground-penetrating radar detected voids beneath the platform spaces that align with medieval descriptions of Templar excavations. Yet political tensions have barred further exploration, leaving their secrets entombed. So what truly lies beneath? The likeliest answer is both mundane and profound. The Templars found enough to fuel their legend, but not enough to prove it. Their real treasure may have been the very act of searching, a metaphor for humanity's endless quest for the divine. And as we'll soon see, their maritime ventures suggest their hunt didn't end in Jerusalem's dust. But let's set sail now to another shadowy chapter of the Templar saga, their lost fleet. When King Philip IV of France launched his brutal crackdown on the order in 1307, something peculiar happened. Despite the arrests of thousands of Templars across Europe, their ships vanished without a trace. These weren't just any vessels. They were part of an advanced naval network that rivaled the era's greatest maritime powers. So where did they go, and what were they carrying? The Templars' mastery of the seas is often overshadowed by their land-based exploits, but evidence suggests they operated a formidable fleet. Historical records from ports like La Rochelle, their primary stronghold on the Atlantic, describe a sudden exodus of Templar ships just days before the mass arrests. Witnesses reported seeing fully loaded vessels slipping away under cover of darkness, their destinations unknown. Some accounts even claim the fleet numbered in the dozens, a staggering amount for a medieval order. This raises the obvious question: what was so valuable that it required such a dramatic escape? One theory points to their vast treasury. As Europe's de facto bankers, the Templars held unimaginable wealth, from gold to sacred relics. But transporting heavy treasure by sea would have been risky and slow. Another possibility is far more intriguing knowledge. Consider this: the Templars had spent nearly 2 centuries collecting artifacts and documents, not just from Jerusalem but from across the Mediterranean. What if their ships carried scrolls from the famed Library of Alexandria, salvaged during the Crusades, or blueprints of Temple Mount's hidden chambers? Even whispers of their bearded head relics suggest they may have been safeguarding something far older than Christianity itself. The fleet's disappearance gets stranger. In Portugal, where the order was never formally disbanded, local sailors spoke of mysterious, white-sailed ships arriving around 1308. These vessels allegedly bore no flags but were crewed by men who matched Templar descriptions. Coincidentally, Portugal soon after became a hub for naval exploration, with the Templars' successors, the Order of Christ, bankrolling voyages that would eventually lead to the Age of Discovery. Then there's the Oak Island connection. Legends in Nova Scotia tell of a pit where Templar sailors buried something immense protected by elaborate booby traps. While mainstream historians dismiss this as myth, it's curious how often Templar symbols appear in early colonial maps of the region. The most compelling clue, though, lies in their naval technology. The Templars didn't just sail, they innovated. Their ships reportedly used lateen sails, a design borrowed from the Muslim world that allowed for unprecedented maneuverability. Some scholars believe they even had early versions of the magnetic compass, centuries before its widespread use in Europe. So did they escape with treasure or something more profound? Perhaps both. The Templars understood that true power wasn't just in gold, it was in controlling the narratives that shaped kingdoms. Whatever their ships carried, its absence left a void that conspiracy theories rushed to fill. And as we'll soon uncover, even their greatest enemy, the Vatican, may have secretly agreed they were innocent. Now let's turn the page to one of the most explosive revelations in Templar history, the Chinon parchment. Hidden away in the Vatican's secret archives for nearly 700 years, this document tells a startling story. It reveals that in 1308, Pope Clement V secretly absolved the Templars of heresy charges after a private investigation. But here's the twist: King Philip IV of France, the man who orchestrated their downfall, chose to ignore it entirely. Why? The parchment itself reads like a medieval thriller. Discovered only in 2001 by researcher Barbara Frail, it details how the Pope interrogated Templar leaders, including Grand Master Jacques de Molay, at Chinon Castle. The knights were given a chance to confess privately without torture, and the result was damning for Philip. The Pope concluded the Templars were guilty of nothing more than minor disciplinary lapses, certainly not the satanic worship or blasphemy Philip had accused them of. So why did Philip ignore this papal pardon? The answer lies in two words: debt and power. The French crown owed the Templars a fortune, money Philip had no intention of repaying. Worse, the order's financial network made them a state within a state, answering only to the Pope. For a king obsessed with centralizing authority, that was intolerable. The heresy charges weren't about religion, they were a calculated move to seize wealth and eliminate a rival. Here's where it gets darker. Philip didn't just disregard the Chinon verdict, he doubled down. While the parchment gathered dust in the Vatican, his agents were extracting horrific public confessions through torture. Templars were burned at the stake for retracting statements made under duress. It was a masterclass in manipulation, proving truth mattered less than spectacle. But the parchment's survival raises another question: why did the Vatican bury it? Some argue the Church feared Philip's retaliation, as France was the papacy's chief protector. Others suggest Clement hoped to reform the order discreetly, avoiding embarrassment. Either way, the document suppression allowed the Templars' guilty myth to harden into history. What makes the Chinon parchment so explosive today isn't just its content, it's the timing. Its discovery coincided with renewed interest in Templar lore, forcing historians to ask how much of their evil reputation was fabricated. If even the Pope cleared them, what else might we have wrong? Philip's legacy, meanwhile, is telling. Within months of de Molay's execution, both he and Clement were dead, some say cursed. The parchment outlasted them all, a silent witness to the real heresy, not the Templars but the corruption that destroyed them. Now let's step into one of the most chilling chapters of Templar history, the day that gave Friday the 13th its infamous reputation. On October 13, 1307, King Philip IV of France launched a meticulously planned operation, striking at dawn to crush the order in a single, devastating blow. Across France, Templar knights were dragged from their beds, accused of heresy, blasphemy, and unspeakable crimes. What followed wasn't just a purge, it was the birth of a superstition that haunts us to this day. The arrests were a masterpiece of political theater. Philip had spent months crafting his case, manipulating public fear with whispers of secret rituals and devil worship. But his real weapon was surprise. The orders for the mass roundup were sealed, opened simultaneously by his officials that Friday morning. Templars, once Europe's most respected warriors, found themselves shackled before they could even grasp what was happening. The speed was brutal, the scale unprecedented. Hundreds were imprisoned in a day, then came the torture. To extract confessions, Philip's interrogators employed horrors straight from medieval nightmares. The rack, the strappado, flames applied to bare feet. Some knights were starved in solitary darkness until they hallucinated. Others had cords tightened around their skulls until blood seeped from their ears. The goal wasn't just pain, it was public spectacle. Under such duress, even the strongest broke, admitting to absurd charges, spitting on the cross, worshipping a demonic idol called Baphomet, engaging in illicit acts during initiation rites. Yet here's the grim irony. Many Templars later retracted these confessions the moment they faced trial, declaring they'd only spoken to stop the agony. Their courage cost them dearly. Philip branded them relapsed heretics, condemning dozens to the stake for daring to reclaim their honor. The most infamous burning came in Paris, where 54 knights were roasted alive over a slow fire, their screams a warning to others. And then there's the superstition. Before that October, Friday the 13th held no special meaning, but the sheer audacity of Philip's betrayal, the synchronized arrests, the desecration of an order sanctioned by the church, etched the date into cultural memory as a symbol of calamity. Over centuries, the Templars' tragedy morphed into folklore, their suffering whispered in tales of bad luck and ill omens. What makes this more than just medieval history is the lingering question: how many of those confessions were real? Modern scholars note that identical phrases appear in hundreds of testimonies, suggesting templated scripts forced onto the knights. Even the Baphomet idol, later a symbol of the occult, likely never existed, just a twisted caricature invented to justify theft and murder. Philip's vendetta didn't just destroy men, it weaponized fear itself. The Templars' real crime wasn't heresy, it was being powerful enough to defy a king. And in that dark Friday's shadow, we see the birth of something timeless, the human habit of turning scapegoats into monsters. Now let's turn to the final act of this tragic saga, the fiery end of Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, and the curse that echoed through history. As the flames licked at his body on that cold March evening in 1314, de Molay did something extraordinary. With his dying breath, he summoned both King Philip IV and Pope Clement V to meet him before God's judgment within a year. What followed was either a chilling fulfillment of prophecy or a twist of fate so uncanny it defies explanation. De Molay's execution was meant to be the ultimate humiliation. Stripped of his robes, tied to a stake on the Isle aux Juifs in Paris, he was given one last chance to confess to the fabricated crimes. Instead, he stunned the crowd by loudly proclaiming his innocence and the innocence of the entire Templar order. Then came the curse, not a shriek of rage, but a calm, deliberate invocation. Witnesses reported his voice carried across the Seine as he called divine justice upon his persecutors. The clock started ticking immediately. Pope Clement, who had reluctantly endorsed the Templars' suppression under Philip's pressure, died just 33 days later of dysentery so severe, contemporary accounts described it as a rotting from within. Philip followed within 8 months, felled by a stroke during a hunting trip. His demise was equally grim. Some chroniclers claimed his body erupted in boils, a detail later embellished as evidence of the curse's potency. But was it supernatural vengeance or mere coincidence? Skeptics point out that medieval lifespans were short, and both men were in declining health. Clement had long suffered from intestinal ailments, and Philip, at 46, was under immense stress from France's financial collapse, partly caused by his own plundering of the Templars' wealth. Yet the timing felt too precise to ignore. Even Philip's successors faced turmoil. His 3 sons died young, extinguishing the Capetian dynasty in under 14 years. The curse's legacy didn't end there. Centuries later, during the French Revolution, anti-monarchy radicals exhumed Philip's bones from the Basilica of Saint Denis and dumped them in a mass grave, a symbolic echo of de Molay's fate. Some even claimed the executioner who lit de Molay's pyre later joined the Templar underground, tormented by guilt. What makes this more than a ghost story is the psychological power it wielded. The curse became a cautionary tale about overreach, a medieval warning that tyranny carries a cost. Whether divine or historical irony, de Molay's defiance outlived his enemies. His last words didn't just haunt Philip and Clement, they cemented the Templars' legend as martyrs, turning a brutal execution into a symbol of resistance. Even today, the story begs the question, when justice fails in life, does it wait in death? Now let's shift our focus to one of the most tantalizing mysteries surrounding the Knights Templar, the fate of their legendary treasure. For centuries, whispers of their unimaginable wealth have fueled expeditions, conspiracies, and even Hollywood plots. But what exactly happened to their riches, and why has no one definitively uncovered them? The Templars weren't just warriors, they were financial pioneers, amassing fortunes through banking, landholdings, and donations from European nobility. By the early 14th century, their treasury was said to rival that of kings. Yet when Philip IV ordered their arrest in 1307, officials found only a fraction of their expected wealth. So where did it go? One persistent theory points to the French village of Rennes-le-Château, where a 19th-century priest named Bérenger Saunière allegedly stumbled upon Templar gold. After renovating his church, Saunière suddenly spent lavishly building ornate gardens, a mansion, and even a tower dedicated to Mary Magdalene. Some claim he discovered coded parchments leading to hidden treasure, possibly linked to the Templars' secret relics. But skeptics argue Saunière's wealth came from selling masses or blackmail, not lost gold. Then there's Oak Island in Nova Scotia, where since the 1700s, treasure hunters have chased tales of a bottomless money pit protected by booby traps. Legends say Templar survivors fled there with sacred artifacts, including the Ark of the Covenant or the Holy Grail. Despite exhaustive digs and high-tech scans, nothing conclusive has emerged, just a trail of cryptic symbols and empty shafts. But could the treasure have been moved long before their fall? Some historians suggest the Templars secretly shipped wealth to Portugal, where they re-emerged as the Order of Christ, or to Scotland, aiding Robert the Bruce at Bannockburn. Others believe their true treasure wasn't gold but knowledge archives of ancient texts or heretical Christian teachings, hidden in remote chapels like Rosslyn. Separating fact from fiction is tricky. While no Templar treasure map has ever been verified, their financial records show meticulous bookkeeping, meaning they likely had time to hide assets. Perhaps the greatest treasure wasn't material at all, but their legacy of defiance and secrecy, still inspiring quests today. After all, isn't the hunt sometimes more thrilling than the find? Next, we'll explore the rumors of surviving Templars. Did they truly vanish? Or did they weave themselves into the fabric of history under new names? The truth might surprise you. Now let's turn our attention to the shadowy aftermath of the Templars' downfall, the whispers of those who slipped through the cracks. When the order was dismantled in 1307, not every knight met a grim fate. Stories persist of a hidden network, a secret exodus that carried Templars to distant shores where they regrouped under new banners. One of the most compelling theories centers on Scotland. In the chaos of their persecution, some knights allegedly fled north, finding refuge with Robert the Bruce, who was excommunicated at the time and had little love for the Pope or Philip IV. It's said these Templars fought alongside Bruce at the Battle of Bannockburn in 1314, their battlefield tactics tipping the scales against the English. Even today, Rosslyn Chapel, often called the Templars' last sanctuary, bears carvings some believe hide coded messages about their survival. Then there's Portugal, where King Denis openly defied the Pope's orders to disband the order. Instead, he rebranded them as the Order of Christ in 1319, preserving their lands and maritime ambitions. Many historians argue this was no mere name change. The Order of Christ sails later adorned Vasco da Gama's ships as he charted new trade routes, fueling speculation that Templar knowledge guided the age of exploration. Switzerland, too, emerges as a hotspot in the fleeing the cross theory. Some claim Templar refugees shaped the country's famed neutrality and even its banking system. The White Cloaks, a rumored faction of escapees, are said to have influenced Swiss mercenary culture and early financial secrecy. While hard evidence is scarce, Switzerland's sudden rise as a haven for wealth and discreet transactions raises eyebrows. But perhaps the most intriguing angle is their alleged influence on later secret societies. Freemasons, for instance, adopted Templar-inspired symbols and rituals, though historians debate whether this was homage or direct lineage. Even the Illuminati mythos borrows from Templar lore, blending fact and fantasy into a potent legend. So did the Templars truly vanish, or did they simply reinvent themselves? The lack of definitive proof only deepens the mystery. What we do know is this: their legacy didn't end with Jacques de Molay's ashes. It smoldered in the shadows, waiting to ignite new chapters in history. Next, we'll unravel the tangled threads between the Templars and Freemasonry, a connection that sparked centuries of debate. Prepare to question everything you've heard. Now let's peel back another layer of this mystery: the tangled relationship between the Knights Templar and Freemasonry. For centuries, whispers have swirled that these two secretive orders are bound by more than just legend. But how much of this connection is fact and how much is fiction? The ties begin with symbolism. Both groups share striking imagery, like the square and compass tools representing moral and architectural precision. But Freemasons also adopted the Templar cross, a red pate, and even the skull and bones motif, which some link to Templar burial rites. These overlapping symbols aren't mere coincidence, say conspiracy theorists. They argue it's a deliberate nod to a hidden lineage. Then there are the rituals. Freemason initiation ceremonies bear eerie resemblances to alleged Templar rites. The blindfolded candidate, the oath of secrecy, the symbolic death and rebirth, all mirror medieval accounts of Templar admissions. Even the term Master Mason echoes the Templars' hierarchy. Critics dismiss this as romantic borrowing, but believers insist it's proof of survival. The Masonic claim to Templar lineage gained traction in the 1700s. A German Freemason named Karl Gotthelf von Hund declared his order descended directly from exiled Templars, a theory he called strict observance. Though historians largely debunked his claims, the idea stuck. Even America's founding Masons, like George Washington, leaned into Templar lore, with some lodges displaying swords and relics tied to the Knights. But here's where it gets murky. While Freemasonry's roots trace to medieval stonemason guilds, there's no concrete evidence linking them to the Templars before the 1700s. The sudden embrace of Templar imagery seems more like revival than continuation. Yet the fascination persists partly because Freemasons themselves fueled it. In 1797, a French Masonic group even staged a mock trial to absolve the Templars of heresy, blurring history and theater. So, is this connection a grand historical truth or a clever reinvention? The answer may lie somewhere in between. Freemasonry didn't just inherit Templar secrets, it reshaped them into a new mythology, one that still captivates us today. Next, we'll decode the stone secrets of Rosslyn Chapel, where every carving seems to whisper a Templar truth. The plot, as they say, thickens. Stepping away from the shadows of Freemasonry, we arrive at a place where stone seems to speak: Scotland's Rosslyn Chapel. Nestled just south of Edinburgh, this 15th century masterpiece is more than a chapel. It's a puzzle box of Templar symbolism begging to be deciphered. Let's explore why this tiny structure has become ground zero for conspiracy theories and historical intrigue. The chapel's connection to the Templars begins with its builders, the St. Clair family. William St. Clair, the chapel's founder, wasn't just a nobleman. Legends claim his ancestors sheltered fugitive Templars after their order's collapse in 1307. Some even say the St. Clairs were Templars themselves, using their wealth to preserve the order's secrets. Whether fact or folklore, the chapel's architecture fuels the fire. Look closely and you'll find carvings that defy explanation: cornstalks, alien-looking plants, and even depictions of maize, a crop unknown in Europe before Columbus. How did these images appear decades before the New World was discovered? Theorists argue the Templars, with their lost fleet, had already mapped the Americas and brought back proof. Then there's the Da Vinci Code effect. Dan Brown's blockbuster novel thrust Rosslyn into the spotlight, suggesting it was the final resting place of the Holy Grail. While Brown's tale is fiction, it tapped into real mysteries. The chapel's apprentice pillar, for instance, is shrouded in legend. Story goes that the master mason, doubting his young apprentice could carve such a complex design, murdered him in a fit of jealousy. The pillars' intricate knots and patterns, some claim hide coded messages, perhaps even Templar blueprints or sacred geometry, but the most tantalizing clues lie underground. Beneath the chapel's floor, radar scans have revealed hidden chambers, some possibly holding chests. Are these Templar relics the Vatican's archives? The St. Clair family has yet to permit a full excavation, leaving us to wonder. Even the chapel's layout whispers secrets. Its alignment mirrors Solomon's temple, a design obsession of the Templars. So, is Rosslyn Chapel a Templar time capsule or an elaborate red herring? The truth may be both. While hard evidence is scarce, the sheer density of oddities suggests someone, whether the St. Clairs or the knights they protected, wanted to leave a trail. And that trail leads us next to the Templars' most controversial belief system, their alleged embrace of Gnostic teachings, a heresy that threatened the very heart of medieval Christianity. Now let's venture into one of the most controversial aspects of the Templars, their rumored Gnostic beliefs, a spiritual thread that could unravel everything we think we know about their faith. While the knights publicly swore allegiance to the Catholic Church, whispers persist that behind closed doors they embraced teachings deemed heretical by medieval authorities. At the heart of these allegations is their apparent reverence for John the Baptist, a figure often elevated above Jesus in certain Gnostic texts. Why would a Christian military order prioritize the messenger over the Messiah? The answer may lie in forgotten gospels and alternative versions of sacred history. Gnosticism, a collection of early Christian movements, taught that salvation came not through blind faith but through secret knowledge, gnosis. These groups often viewed the material world as flawed, even evil, and sought liberation through divine insight. Some Gnostic texts, like the Gospel of Judas, portrayed Jesus not as a suffering savior but as a revealer of hidden truths, while John the Baptist is framed as a purifier, a role that resonated with the Templars' austere rituals. The knights' alleged initiation rites, where they supposedly denied Christ or spat on the cross, take on new meaning when seen through this lens. Were these acts not blasphemy but symbolic rejections of the Church's dogma, echoing Gnostic disdain for the material world? The Templars' connection to these ideas may trace back to their time in the Holy Land. During the Crusades, they had access to long-lost texts and heterodox communities, including the Mandeans of Mesopotamia, who revered John the Baptist as their central prophet. Templar artifacts, like the infamous Baphomet head later twisted into a demonic symbol by their accusers, might have represented this baptismal focus, a theory bolstered by their cryptic references to a bearded head with healing powers. Even their architectural choices, like the octagonal baptistries in their chapels, hint at a baptism-centric theology. But the most tantalizing clue lies in the Gospel of Judas, discovered in the 1970s after centuries of suppression. This text, condemned as heresy, depicts Judas not as a traitor but as Jesus' closest confidant, entrusted with secret knowledge. If the Templars had access to such suppressed Gospels, it would explain why their beliefs alarmed the Church. A knight who saw Judas as a hero or John the Baptist as the true light would have been a direct threat to papal authority. So were the Templars Gnostics. The evidence is circumstantial but compelling. Their rituals, their artifacts, and their rumored texts all point to a spirituality far more complex than the Church could tolerate. Next, we'll confront the shadowy figure at the center of their alleged heresies, the enigmatic Baphomet, a symbol so misunderstood it sparked centuries of fear and fascination. Now let's unravel one of the darkest shadows cast upon the Templars, the chilling accusations surrounding Baphomet. This mysterious figure became the centerpiece of their alleged heresies, but was it truly a demon they worshipped, or something far more nuanced that history has twisted beyond recognition? The name Baphomet first emerged during the Knights' trials, when tortured Templars confessed to worshipping a strange idol sometimes described as a bearded head, other times as a grotesque figure with goat-like features. Their accusers claimed it was a pagan deity or even Satan himself, but modern scholars argue this terrifying image might have been a deliberate distortion of something far less sinister. One compelling theory suggests Baphomet was actually a coded reference to John the Baptist. The name itself could be a medieval cipher when split into components using the Atbash code, an ancient Hebrew encryption method. Baphomet transforms into the Greek word Sophia, meaning wisdom. This fits perfectly with the Templars' rumored Gnostic leanings, where divine wisdom was the ultimate goal. The bearded head they venerated might have been a relic, perhaps even the skull of John the Baptist, revered as a vessel of sacred knowledge rather than an object of worship. Another interpretation points to Islamic influence. During their time in the Holy Land, the Templars interacted deeply with Sufi mystics, whose concept of basmala, an invocation of God's names, could have been misheard or mistranslated as Baphomet. Some Templar confessions describe rituals involving a head that bestowed fertility and wealth, echoing Sufi traditions where spiritual masters' tombs were believed to channel blessings. The demonic imagery we associate with Baphomet today actually came centuries later, when occultists like Eliphas Levi reinvented the symbol in the 1800s. His famous goat-headed figure, blending male and female elements, was a deliberate esoteric creation far removed from anything the Templars would have recognized. The knight's so-called idol was likely either a misunderstood relic, a symbolic cipher, or an outright fabrication by King Philip's prosecutors, who needed shocking evidence to justify their purge. So why did the Baphomet myth persist? Because it served everyone's agenda. The Church could paint the Templars as heretics, the Crown could seize their wealth, and later occultists could claim the knights as secret keepers of forbidden knowledge. Next, we'll step onto the battlefield to see how these spiritual tensions played out during the Crusades, where the Templars clashed not just with enemies abroad but with ideological foes within Christendom itself. Moving from the shadows of heresy accusations into the blazing sunlight of the battlefield, let's examine how the Knights Templar carved their legend during the Crusades. Far from being mere monks with swords, they were master tacticians who reshaped medieval warfare while navigating a web of political intrigue that would make modern diplomats dizzy. Their military innovations alone deserve recognition. The Templars pioneered the concept of a standing army in Europe, where knights trained year-round rather than being seasonal levies. This gave them devastating efficiency. They perfected the cavalry charge, with knights locking their knees in the saddle to form what chroniclers called an iron avalanche, often shattering enemy lines in one brutal strike. But their true genius lay in discipline. Unlike other Crusader forces that chased loot or personal glory, Templar units followed orders with machine-like precision. At the Battle of Montjuic in 1177, just 500 Templar knights led a surprise attack that annihilated Saladin's army of 26,000, proving quality could triumph over staggering numbers. Speaking of Saladin, the Templars' relationship with the Muslim leader was more complex than simple hatred. After their defeat at the Horns of Hattin in 1187, where Saladin captured and executed hundreds of Templars, a grudging respect emerged. Arab chronicles note that Saladin spared Templar Grand Master Gerard de Ridefort's life twice, first out of chivalry, then because he believed the reckless commander was more useful to him alive, as his poor decisions weakened Christian defenses. The Templars, in turn, secretly negotiated prisoner exchanges with Saladin's brother Al-Adil, showing pragmatism beneath their zeal. Then there were the assassins, the shadowy Nizari Ismailis, who haunted both Crusader and Muslim leaders. The Templars had a bizarre rapport with these dagger-wielding fanatics. While publicly decrying them, evidence suggests secret alliances. In 1173, assassin envoys approached the Templar stronghold at Tortosa offering tribute. But the Templar envoy, Walter of Mesnil, murdered them mid-parley, possibly to prevent them revealing prior collaborations. This incident exposes the Templars' ruthless realpolitik. They'd work with anyone until it no longer served their goals. Behind the battlefields, their political plays were equally calculated. They manipulated papal decrees to operate beyond local bishops' control and loaned money to rival kings to keep them dependent. During the ill-fated Second Crusade, Templar advisors deliberately misled King Louis VII of France through treacherous mountain passes, possibly to weaken his rival Conrad of Germany. Their greatest power move, creating the first international banking system under the guise of protecting pilgrims, which gave them leverage over nobles and monarchs alike. What emerges isn't the black and white holy warriors of legend, but a pragmatic order that blended faith, finance, and ferocity. They weren't just fighting for Jerusalem, they were playing chess while others played checkers, anticipating moves centuries ahead. Next, we'll decode the symbolism hidden in their iconic red cross, where sacred geometry and whispered heresies intertwine. Now we turn our attention to something every Templar wore with pride: the blazing red cross that marked them as both holy warriors and something far more enigmatic. That crimson cross patè wasn't just a uniform insignia, it was a multi-layered symbol whispering secrets about their beliefs, alliances, and perhaps even hidden knowledge. Let's start with the basics. The cross's unique shape, broad at the ends and tapering inward, wasn't arbitrary. Its 8 points allegedly represented the 8 Beatitudes from Christ's Sermon on the Mount, but look deeper and the geometry gets intriguing. Some scholars note it mirrors the Maltese cross used later by the Hospitallers, suggesting a shared symbolic language among military orders. Yet the Templars' version had one glaring difference: it was always blood red, a color they claimed symbolized martyrdom. But in an age where symbols held power, was there more to it? Enter the Cathars, the Gnostic Christian sect the Church exterminated as heretics in the Albigensian Crusade. The Cathars rejected material wealth and believed in a dualistic cosmos, ideas that suspiciously mirror certain Templar practices. Historians like Malcolm Barber point to the Templars' unusual tolerance toward the Cathars in Languedoc, where they owned vast lands. Some speculate the cross's widening arms secretly echoed the Cathar concept of spiritual expansion, a silent nod to heretical allies, even more provocative. The cross's 8 points align perfectly with the 8-rayed star found in Cathar sacred geometry, fueling theories of a covert connection. Then there's the Chi-Rho link, the early Christian symbol formed by superimposing the first 2 Greek letters of Christ. Templar chaplains were known to use this symbol in their private chapels, and the cross paté's shape creates a subtle framework for embedding the Chi-Rho within it. This wasn't just decorative, it transformed the cross into a composite emblem of divine authority and hidden wisdom. Some medievalists argue this design allowed the Templars to secretly proclaim themselves as guardians of Christ's true teachings, distinct from mainstream church doctrine. But the most tantalizing interpretations come from occult traditions. French esoteric writers like Robert Ambelain claim the cross's arms represented the 4 rivers of Eden, with the center symbolizing the lost gnosis of paradise. Others tie it to the rose cross of later Rosicrucians, suggesting the Templars preserved ancient mysteries under the guise of Christian piety. Even the red hue takes on new meaning. Alchemists associated it with the rubido, the final stage of the great work where base metal becomes gold. Could the cross have been a coded reference to their rumored pursuit of spiritual and physical transformation? What's undeniable is that the cross served as both shield and cipher, a public declaration of faith that may have concealed far more than it revealed. Whether signaling heresy, housing sacred geometry, or encrypting alchemical secrets, it remains the Templars' most enduring enigma. And as we'll soon discover, their symbols weren't the only things hiding in plain sight. Next, we confront the chilling records of their trials, where torture twisted truth into convenient fictions. Now let's step into the shadowy chambers where the Templars' fate was sealed, the brutal interrogations that turned their legacy into a tangled web of truth and lies. The trial records from 1307 onward reveal a harrowing glimpse into how confessions were extracted not through evidence, but through unimaginable suffering. King Philip IV's operatives employed methods designed to break both body and spirit. Victims were subjected to the strappado, where their hands were bound behind their backs and they were hoisted into the air by ropes, dislocating shoulders with a sickening pop. Others endured the infamous water torture, forced to swallow gallons until their stomachs swelled to near bursting. The goal was never justice, it was compliance. Under such duress, even the most devout Templars confessed to outlandish crimes, from spitting on the cross to worshipping a demonic head called Baphomet. Yet the transcripts tell a more nuanced story. Take the testimony of Templar Knight Jean de Chalons, who initially admitted to heresy but later retracted, declaring, "I would have confessed to killing God if they demanded it." His words expose a chilling pattern. Over 80% of confessions were later recanted once torture ceased. Even Pope Clement V, though complicit, privately doubted the validity of these admissions, as revealed in Vatican correspondence unearthed centuries later. The propaganda machine, however, was relentless. Philip's ministers meticulously edited trial records, omitting retractions and amplifying salacious details to justify the order's destruction. For instance, the claim that Templars engaged in homosexual rites stemmed from a single coerced confession by a knight under torture, a charge absent from all other European trials. Meanwhile, key exonerating evidence, like the Chinon parchment, was buried for 700 years. But perhaps the most revealing detail lies in what the torturers avoided asking. Despite lurid accusations, not a single transcript queries the Templars about their vast treasury or the rumored treasures beneath Temple Mount. This omission hints at Philip's true motive, silencing the order before they could expose his own crippling debts to them. As we peel back these layers, one truth becomes undeniable: the trial records are less a window into Templar guilt than a mirror reflecting the terror tactics of a desperate king. And with their reputation in tatters, the stage was set for their final act, a curse that would echo through history. Now, let's follow the trail of the Templars' vanishing act, a daring escape that may have shaped the financial heart of modern Europe. As the net closed around them in France, whispers suggest a faction of knights fled to the rugged safety of the Swiss Alps, where their influence might have quietly reshaped history. The White Cloaks theory proposes that Templars, stripped of their iconic red crosses, disguised themselves in plain white robes and melted into Switzerland's neutral territories. Local legends in towns like Bern and Zurich speak of mysterious strangers arriving in the early 1300s, bringing with them advanced knowledge of finance and architecture. Intriguingly, these newcomers were said to have organized the region's first secure deposit systems, echoing the Templars' famed banking methods. Swiss medieval records offer tantalizing clues. The sudden appearance of vaulted, Templar-style churches in remote alpine valleys coincides with the order's suppression. Even more compelling is the rise of Switzerland's banking secrecy laws by the 1400s, which mirrored the Templars' practice of protecting clients' assets from monarchs. Historians note that early Swiss banks adopted the Templars' system of encrypted deposit receipts, a direct precursor to modern numbered accounts. The town of Sion, nestled in the Valais region, holds perhaps the most enigmatic link. Beneath its cathedral lies a labyrinth of tunnels, some bearing carvings of Templar crosses. Local chronicles describe a band of knights in white, fortifying the area against Habsburg invasions shortly after 1307. Could these have been the last guardians of the order's treasure, or even its secrets? Skeptics argue that the Swiss connection is romanticized, pointing out gaps in the paper trail. Yet the circumstantial evidence is striking. The sudden sophistication of Swiss mercenary forces in the 14th century, trained in tactics identical to Templar cavalry, hints at more than coincidence. Even the Swiss flag's symmetrical cross, adopted centuries later, whispers of a hidden homage. What's undeniable is the timing. Just as the Templars vanished from France, Switzerland emerged as a haven for the persecuted, its neutrality becoming a shield for those fleeing power. Whether the Knights truly seeded its banking system or merely inspired it, their shadow lingers in the vaults of Zurich, where money, like secrets, finds its keepers. As we turn this page, another mystery beckons, rumors of Templar sails vanishing into the Atlantic, carrying relics toward an uncharted horizon. But that's a voyage for another chapter. Now, let's set sail into one of the most tantalizing Templar mysteries, their possible voyage to the New World long before Columbus. While history credits the Genoese explorer for discovering America in 1492, intriguing evidence suggests the Knights Templar may have crossed the Atlantic centuries earlier. Could these warrior monks have left their mark on the shores of North America? The Newport Tower in Rhode Island stands as the most debated clue. This enigmatic stone structure, with its 8 arches and cylindrical design, bears a striking resemblance to Templar built round churches across Europe, like the famed chapel of St. Mary in Toma, Portugal. Carbon dating places its construction somewhere between the 1400s and 1600s, but architectural analysis reveals techniques identical to Templar masonry from the 1200s. Local lore even claims the tower was a navigational beacon, a tool the Templars, with their advanced knowledge of astronomy, were known to use. Then there's the Kensington runestone, unearthed in Minnesota in 1898. Carved with Norse runes, it tells of a Nordic expedition in the year 1362, but some scholars spot Templar symbolism hidden in its markings. The phrase Avum, etched at the top, mirrors the Templars' abbreviation for Ave Virgo Maria, a common invocation in their rituals. More curiously, the stone mentions 8 Goths and 22 Norwegians on a journey from Vinland, a possible reference to Templar allies blending with Viking explorers. Venturing further south, the Westford Knight in Massachusetts adds another layer. This weathered rock carving depicts what appears to be a medieval knight in full armor, clutching a sword with a distinctive Templar cross on its hilt. Local historians argue it commemorates a fallen Templar from a pre-Columbian expedition, possibly linked to Prince Henry Sinclair, a Scottish noble tied to the order. Sinclair's voyage in the late 1300s, documented in the Zeno narrative, describes a transatlantic journey that aligns with Templar escape routes after their dissolution. Of course, skepticism abounds. Mainstream archaeology dismisses these artifacts as hoaxes or misidentifications, pointing to the lack of definitive proof like Templar coins or weaponry in the Americas. Yet the circumstantial web is hard to ignore. The Templars' close ties to Norse seafarers, their control of ports like La Rochelle, and their rumored maps possibly inherited from Viking explorers suggest they had both the means and the motive to seek refuge across the ocean. What's undeniable is the pattern. From Newport's tower to Minnesota's runestone, these anomalies hint at a shadowy chapter of history where the Templars may have outrun their persecutors by sailing into legend. And as we weigh the evidence, another question lingers: what might they have carried with them? That mystery leads us next to their most enduring enigma, the fabled treasure of Rennes-le-Château. Shifting our focus from the high seas to the halls of finance, let's uncover how the Knights Templar revolutionized the way the world handles money. While their military and religious exploits often steal the spotlight, their most enduring legacy might just be the blueprint they created for modern banking. Imagine a world without ATMs, wire transfers, or even basic checks. This was the reality before the Templars introduced financial innovations so advanced they still shape our economy today. At the heart of their system was the concept of the letter of credit, a medieval version of today's travelers' checks. Pilgrims journeying to the Holy Land faced constant threats of robbery, so the Templars offered a solution. A nobleman could deposit funds at a Templar preceptory in Paris, for example, and receive a coded document redeemable for cash in Jerusalem. This eliminated the need to carry bulky coinage across dangerous routes. The Templars even charged a small fee for the service, effectively inventing international currency exchange. Sound familiar? It's the same principle underpinning modern banking networks like SWIFT. Then there were their checks, another Templar innovation. Members of the order could issue written orders to transfer funds between accounts, a practice that laid the groundwork for today's checking systems. Their ledgers meticulously tracked deposits, withdrawals, and interest, with records so precise they rivaled contemporary bookkeeping. In fact, some historians argue the Templars' accounting methods influenced the double-entry system later perfected by Italian merchants during the Renaissance. Perhaps most strikingly, the Templars functioned as Europe's first true multinational bankers, offering loans to everyone from peasants to kings. When Philip IV of France needed funds for his wars, it was the Templars who financed him, ironically, with money he'd later used to destroy them. Their network of preceptories acted like early branch banks, allowing assets to be managed across borders with unprecedented efficiency. Comparing their system to today's financial infrastructure reveals startling parallels. The Templars' use of encrypted documents foreshadowed digital security protocols, while their liquidity management mirrors modern reserve banking. Even their downfall carries a cautionary tale for today's institutions. Their vast centralized wealth made them a target, much like the too-big-to-fail banks of our era. Yet for all their sophistication, the Templars' greatest financial secret wasn't their methods but their trust. In an age of illiteracy and superstition, their reputation for honesty turned their order into a global brand. That intangible asset, credibility, remains the cornerstone of banking to this day. As we follow the money trail deeper into Templar history, we'll next uncover what the Vatican still hides about their sudden demise. Now, let's pull back the curtain on one of history's most closely guarded vaults, the Vatican's secret archives. Buried within its labyrinthine corridors are documents about the Templars that the Church has kept under lock and key for centuries. While we know fragments of their story, the full truth remains tantalizingly out of reach, hidden in parchments the Vatican has yet to release. What are they still protecting and why? Recent leaks and declassified materials offer glimpses into this shadowy chapter. One of the most explosive revelations came in 2007, when the Vatican finally published the Chinon parchment, a document suppressed for nearly 700 years. This parchment, signed by Pope Clement V, absolved the Templars of heresy charges, exposing their trial as a sham orchestrated by King Philip IV of France. But here's the catch: the Vatican waited until 2001 to even acknowledge its existence, and it took another 6 years to release it. That delay raises a glaring question: what else are they sitting on? Scholars speculate that undisclosed records could detail the Templars' inner rituals, their alleged discoveries beneath the Temple Mount, or even their rumored ties to forbidden knowledge. Some believe the archives hold confiscated Templar ledgers, which might reveal the true extent of their wealth and who inherited it after their dissolution. The Church's reluctance to open these files fuels theories of a cover-up, perhaps to avoid unsettling revelations about its own historical complicity. Then there's the matter of the Templars' missing fleet. Leaked correspondence between medieval bishops hints that the Vatican tracked Templar ships fleeing to Scotland and Portugal, possibly carrying relics or treasure. Yet the archive's official records on this vanish after 1307, as if deliberately erased. Even today, researchers face strict limits on accessing Templar-related documents, with some folders marked reserved indefinitely. The implications are staggering. If the Vatican ever fully opens its archives, we might finally learn whether the Templars were truly heretics or victims of a king's greed. More intriguingly, their sealed records could rewrite history, confirming legends about their hidden relics or underground networks. Until then, the Vatican's silence speaks volumes. Some secrets, it seems, are still too dangerous to reveal. As we turn our attention to their enigmatic symbols, keep this in mind. the Templars' story isn't just locked in dusty scrolls, it's etched in stone waiting to be decoded. Now let's step into the world of storytelling and see how the Knights Templar have been transformed from historical warriors into pop culture legends. Few medieval groups capture the modern imagination like the Templars, whose blend of secrecy, power, and mystery makes them irresistible to filmmakers, game developers, and authors. Take Indiana Jones, for example. In The Last Crusade, the Templars are reimagined as guardians of the Holy Grail, a role that taps into real legends about their alleged treasure hunts. The film cleverly blends fact and fiction, showing the Templars as both noble protectors and shadowy conspirators. It's this duality that makes them so compelling, were they holy warriors or keepers of dangerous secrets. Hollywood loves that ambiguity. Then there's Assassin's Creed, where the Templars become the ultimate villains, a secret society pulling the strings of history. The game exaggerates their influence, turning them into a timeless cabal obsessed with control. But here's the twist: this fictional take isn't entirely baseless. The real Templars did have unprecedented financial and political reach, making their pop culture portrayal feel eerily plausible. Even Dan Brown's The Da Vinci Code couldn't resist the Templar allure, weaving them into a conspiracy about the bloodline of Christ. While historians roll their eyes at the plot, the book's massive success proves how deeply these myths resonate. People are fascinated by the idea that the Templars knew something explosive, something that could shake the foundations of religion or power. But why do modern audiences love Templar stories so much? Part of it is their aesthetic, those striking white mantles with the red cross, the aura of sacred knighthood. They look like heroes straight out of a fantasy novel, yet it's also their tragic downfall that captivates us. A group so powerful, brought low by betrayal and greed, is the stuff of epic drama. Their story has everything: intrigue, treachery, lost treasure, and a hint of the supernatural. Video games, books, and films keep reinventing the Templars because they're the perfect blank canvas. Writers can project modern fears about secret societies, corrupt institutions, or hidden histories onto their medieval framework. Whether they're depicted as guardians, villains, or tragic figures, the Templars endure because they represent the thin line between myth and reality. And speaking of reality, their influence isn't just on screen. The next time you see a red cross on a white flag, remember, the Templars' legacy is everywhere, from the stories we tell to the symbols we still recognize centuries later. As we come to the end of our journey through the shadows of the Knights Templar, one thing becomes undeniably clear: their story is far more than a medieval footnote. It's a puzzle wrapped in whispers, a legacy that refuses to fade. Think about it, a brotherhood of warrior monks armed with faith and steel, who rose to become Europe's most powerful bankers, only to be wiped out in a single, brutal Friday the 13th. Yet here we are, centuries later, still piecing together their secrets. Their enduring mystique lies in the gaps, the unanswered questions. Did they really unearth something beneath the Temple Mount? Was their sudden wealth tied to lost relics like the Holy Grail or the Ark of the Covenant? And what of the Chinon parchment, the Vatican's hidden absolution that arrived too late? These aren't just historical curiosities. They're threads in a tapestry of power, faith, and betrayal that feels startlingly relevant today. Consider their influence. The Templars didn't just disappear after their dissolution. Their financial innovations, checks, loans, even early forms of credit laid the groundwork for modern banking. Rumors persist that fleeing members shaped the Swiss banking system or inspired the Freemasons. Even their symbols, like the Red Cross Pate, echo in everything from corporate logos to military insignia. Their footprint is everywhere, hidden in plain sight. Then there's the supernatural layer, the curses, the occult accusations. Jacques de Molay's dying words condemning Pope Clement V and King Philip IV were followed by their eerily timely deaths. Coincidence or something more? And let's not forget Baphomet, the enigmatic figure they were accused of worshipping. Was it a demon, a cipher, or a twisted fabrication by their enemies? The line between their reality and our myths is razor thin. So here's the real question: what truths remain buried? The Templars were meticulous record keepers, yet so much of their archives vanished or were destroyed. The Vatican's secret vaults likely hold unreleased documents. Oak Island's endless treasure hunts and Rosslyn Chapel's cryptic carvings keep the hope alive. Maybe their greatest secret isn't gold or relics, but an idea, a truth about power and secrecy that still unsettles those in charge. Now it's your turn. What do you think the Templars were guarding? Did they flee with treasure, knowledge, or something far stranger? Drop your theories below, because history isn't just written in books. It's written in the questions we dare to ask. And if you're hungry for more mysteries, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. The past isn't done talking. Are you listening?